Let's do a quick review of valuation and market analysis, aka appraisals. This starts on page 18. You've got 6 test questions in this section. The number one thing I think you need to know, without a doubt, is the definition of an appraisal. It is an opinion of market value that is done by a certified appraiser. An opinion of market value. Now, I've got the definition of market value and market price at the top of page 19. Market value is what any buyer and any seller, based on the data, would pay for that property. Market price is what is one buyer and one seller coming to contract terms for the price of that property. Okay. I do think broker price opinion is a good one for you to know. What is it and who can do it? A broker price opinion, or a BPO, is a shorter version of an appraisal. It's kind of a speedy process to typically help a consumer remove that private mortgage insurance, PMI, to maybe do a home equity line of credit. It's going to be things maybe of that nature is what it is for. Who can do it can be a real estate professional or an appraiser. You don't have to be an appraiser to do a BPO. You can be a licensed agent, broker, or salesperson. My friend Andrea has 2 bank connections. She probably is doing, I'm going to guess, around 15 BPOs for them every month, and they pay her a flat fee. And sometimes, like if someone has defaulted on their mortgage, they just have her go by and take photos of the property to verify, someone's living there, or, hasn't been abandoned. She's even done that before, but she does these at a really high level. Absolutely, I think you need to know the definition of value. And I would know those 4 elements that make up value of demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. How much demand is there? Are there a lot of buyers? The demand in Des Moines is very different than my hometown of Brighton, Iowa. A lot more people want to live in Des Moines than Brighton. That's why Des Moines is slightly larger, right? The other layer then is utility. Is that land being used for its best purpose? Scarcity means there's only so many properties either on the market, there's only so much land to build on. You want to build a brand new home in Polk County, you're probably in Adel, maybe now, or something, like you're getting closer and closer to Omaha, closer and closer to Ames. And then transferability, how easy is it to transfer the title from one owner to the other? Or are there a bunch of weird encumbrances like deed restrictions or liens? I think for the exam, if you know the acronym DUST, now I'm spoiling you with an acronym. I don't have an acronym for everything. But I will just say the acronym DUST has helped me navigate this. Knowing that there's a D word, a U word, an S word, and a T word when I look at those exam test questions. That has helped me navigate. So if anything, know that acronym DUST. Let's go on to page 19 with the appraisal process. And the number one thing I want you to know here is, what is the first step of the appraisal process? Know that it is to define the problem. Why are we doing this appraisal? Is it for a purchase? Is it for a refinance? Is it for a home equity line of credit? Is it to get rid of PMI? What is the goal here? In the uniform appraisal report, this is going to help you decide what comparable sold properties that we're using as data are appropriate. And I had you maybe highlight 3 of these that I think could help you navigate best. Number 1, the property has to be in the same neighborhood. Proximity matters. Number 2, it's got to be a sale within the last 12 months. 12 months, which means they can go back a full calendar year. And then number 3, we wouldn't include a distressed property or a unique sale that was maybe between family members. The foreclosure property, even though some foreclosures can be in great condition, they are considered a distressed property by language, because I've seen foreclosures where people have literally punched holes in the wall on the way out, tried to take the kitchen sink. They left behind cats. I mean, I've seen some really rough properties. The other thing that you got to consider, even if the property is in good condition, has it had utilities on the entire time? And in Iowa, especially, that matters in the winter. Did Mid-American or Alliant shut utilities off? And are there maybe pipes that froze that we don't know about, right? The other element is, how easy is a foreclosure to transfer? Or are there title issues that the owner created before it went back to the bank that need resolved? So that's why it's considered a distressed property, is it might not just be in the condition of the physical property, but it might be the condition of the title work, right? And then family members we don't want to use, because I'm just going to tell you, my sister loves my house. Whenever I talk about selling it, she says, don't sell this house. We love this house. But she's also not going to pay top dollar for it. You know what I mean? She's going to want to inherit it, but she's not going to get into a bidding war with you to buy it. If she owns this, it's going to be at a deal, right? And we see this happen a lot of times where, I had some neighbors, he had a heart attack, ambulance came, they worked on him in the ambulance for a good 30 to 40 minutes before they even transported him, just to get him to a place where they could drive. I mean, they really were all hands when he got sick. He did not die in the property, not that that matters, but when he got to the hospital, he was there for maybe an hour and passed away. His wife never wanted to come back to this house again. She immediately transferred the title to her family, her boys. Whenever you transfer title, you've got to declare a value of the property. And they just threw a number on it because they had no idea what the house was worth. And in doing that, it made it look like the house was worth $150,000 is what its last sale was for. Well, it wasn't a real sale, it was just a transfer. We wouldn't want to use that as our data. That would completely skew the situation. Does that make sense? I see some heads nodding. I will take it. Page 20, principles of value. I think anticipation there at the top is a good one for you. This is the concept that an occurrence that might happen or not happen is going to affect the value of your property. So what happens when there's an announcement that an Amazon fulfillment center is coming to your town? What happens when, the example that I used, what happens in Newton, Iowa, when Maytag Appliance announces they're closing, right? And those all affect value. So the question is, if a seller calls and says, the local manufacturing plant or the major employer in my town is making cuts or closing, when's the best time to sell my house? The answer is now. Go before it gets worse. If that's what you're worried about, go before it gets worse is basically the point. And I saw a little wobble with this. I've had the good fortune to help several people that work with John Deere and John Deere Credit make moves over the years. Um, whether it's between Ankeny and Moline, making a job transfer for one of the plants or whatever. I've gotten to work with a lot of really amazing clients that work for John Deere over the years. And I know they had a little bit of a stumble this last year with some rearrangement, some layoffs, and I think they had a strike or something the year before. Don't quote me. I felt a little stumble in my business because I've got a lot of clients, right, that I work with that I've met there over the years. I've helped relocate, and they're all getting back on track now. But I felt a little stumble in my business from that. I don't know that it affected the market, but they did lose some high ticket employees in that restructure. Change is the idea that houses change, right? Tornadoes, fires, basic wear and tear. Competition means even though we've got data that the property might be worth 250 based on past sales, if there's 10 other houses already for sale at 250, is that house worth 250 anymore? And the answer is probably, I agree with you, nodding, probably not. Because even though we've got data, we've got all this competition. And what are we going to do to stand out against the competition? Again, when Hy-Vee has chimney bananas for sale, what do they do with bananas? Lower the price. Conformity. I've been saying this to you every day. I want you to shine bright like a diamond and be uniquely you. You all have talents and gifts that will make you wildly successful in real estate if you actually use them. But when it comes to real estate, that's a very different story. Conformity really does matter. Being very, very unique makes your property hard to price. Being the biggest, most over improved property in a neighborhood does make it hard to price. Being the smallest in the worst condition sometimes makes it hard to price. Conformity really does help protect values. That's why a lot of these builders put those deed restrictions in place that we talked about the other day. That way that the properties conform and no one's building a house that's going to put their neighbor at a disadvantage and vice versa. That conformity matters in protecting property value. Now, we talked about some unique properties. I'm sure you all have that one house you drive by in your community that you think, what the heck? Who lives there? Those are really hard to price. And in Iowa, I think the unique properties that are hard to price right now, barn dominiums. Barn dominiums. Do you know what I mean by that? Contribution. This means that not everything you add to your property is going to increase the value. Updating a kitchen can improve the value. Adding a swimming pool could add value, but maybe not as much as you think. Really, when it comes to pricing property, it's all about amenities, but they've got to be amenities that are desirable by a buyer. And maybe there's a seller that put in an amenity that's only desirable to them. Right? I had a property that I sold a few years ago that the previous seller had a child with some mobility issues and some other issues, I think, as well, in terms of mental and physical disability. But from a physical disability, they had a deck that was on the second story, and their child couldn't go down the steps, but he could do a slide. So they put a slide that they could safely, and it was tethered, but they could safely slide him down to get him into the yard. Now, when we looked at the property, my buyers, their kids were like, "Oh my God, a slide! We can slide off the deck." But the parents were instantly like, that feels unsafe. That does not feel safe. So again, that is a feature that I do think they had buyers that were like, that slide is weird. My clients were able to overlook it, and they knew that they wanted to replace the deck anyway. And they had older kids that they felt like it would work, and the rest of the house was great. But that is a feature that did not increase value. They did it because it was what worked for their family, but not really an improvement, did not increase value. And for some buyers, it probably deterred them from purchasing that home. You never know. You just need one buyer. Highest and best value. This means, do we have the right property on the right piece of land? And y'all know when you are driving and you've got a new development, all these new houses, and right in the middle of it is an old farmhouse, right? It's that last owner that's just holding out before they sell to a developer. That's where you got to ask, is the right thing on the right property? Or are we building a hog farm in prime residential location? Something against our piggies. Increasing and diminishing returns. My way of describing this to you was, if we've got two houses that are at 200,000, one is larger at 1,800 square feet and one is smaller at 1,000 square feet, but they're both worth 200. What can we assume is the condition? The larger home is probably has more repairs, but the smaller property maybe is an apple pie order to justify them both being at 200. Which means if you want to still keep that 1,800 square feet house, but if you want it in better condition, what's going to happen to your price point? You're going to need to increase it. That's how I look at increasing and diminishing returns. Top of page 21. Plottage is where I said A plus B does not equal C. If you add lot 1 and lot 2 together, separately they might be worth 20,000 a piece. But when you combine them, they become a super lot. And instead of being worth 40,000, 20 plus 20, now maybe it's worth 60,000. Substitution is the one that you're going to use a lot. And substitution is the concept behind the sales comparison approach that we'll discuss on page 22. Here's the deal with substitution. Alice has a home built in 2015, and she puts new air conditioner and furnace in it. It's in good condition. I've got a very similar home to hers across the street. Let's say Alice sold her property for 300. New mechanicals. I go to list my property and my mechanicals are older, but I've got a new roof. What could maybe my house sell for? And I think that the theory here is that we could substitute the new mechanicals for the new roof and justify that my house also would have a value of 300. Does that make sense? Or substituting her mechanicals, that big investment, for my big investment of the roof. We also know that if she sold hers in good condition with new AC and furnace for 300, if I don't have a new roof, I don't have new mechanicals, and I have 27 iguanas in my basement, what is my house worth 300 now? I got to substitute out that I don't have the new things. I got to substitute out that I maybe have a house that smells like a lizard farm. I don't know what that smells like. You don't really want to know. And then supply and demand. Anytime demand is high and supply is low, demand is high, supply is low, we call that a seller's market because we've got multiple buyers that are going to be demanding the low inventory, and that's going to drive the price up. What do you think happens when Caitlin Clark finally drops a shoe? That's right. Bots go online. Bots go online and buy them in 54 seconds. They sell out, and now you're paying triple the price on, I don't know, eBay or a third party. I don't know what's going on. That was a very fast sellout. Hopefully, some people got a pair. Now, let's talk about the opposite when inventory is high, inventory is high and demand is low. So we had inventory is low, demand high. That's buyer's market. Now we've got inventory high, demand low. That's a buyer's market. So seller's market is inventory low, demand high. Buyer's market is inventory high, demand low. Hopefully I said it right that time. I did. And it's a buyer's market because they've got a ton of inventory. So in order for a seller to attract an offer, they've got to be competitive, which could be reflective of their price. Now on page 22 and 23, we've got three different value approaches. How an appraiser does their report. I want you to know the definition and when it would be used. The sales comparison approach on page 22. This is going to be great when we've got a lot of data like residential sales. And this is where we take a subject property that you're looking to price, and we compare it to other comparables that have sold in the past. And again, we're going to use this idea of substitution in order to determine a most likely sales price. Always make adjustments to the comparable properties. That's another good thing to know. Not the subject, you make the adjustments to the comparables. Cost approach is where we basically take it down to a bare lot and build it new. And then we use these elements of depreciation in the middle of page 23. This is going to be for unique real estate. There's not a lot of comparables for it. In the middle there, I would know physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence. Physical deterioration is going to be basic wear and tear. Paint, flooring, light fixtures. It's curable. By fixing it or updating it, it's going to be worth your investment to do it. Functional obsolescence is incurable. It might literally be impossible to cure, or it would not financially be worth it. I use the example of needing to walk through one bedroom to get to another bedroom, right? When I said that the other day, you all had a look on your face like, that's weird. Yeah. Whenever you got that sense of this is weird, it might be functional obsolescence. My church has a second story that we used to have for like, I don't know, that's where our breakout for like Sunday school was. And one of the big Sunday school rooms had a door that went outside from the second level. But guess what? No stairs. No stairs. That's functional obsolescence. And kind of dangerous. relying on the good Lord to like not let me push anyone out of it. I don't know what that was going. That's functional obsolescence, so that still bothers me. Incurable. External obsolescence is also incurable, but it's something that's off of your property. Maybe it's that you live close to a very loud gas station, or maybe it's that you've got a neighbor that is visually a nuisance. Or I had a great listing one time in Indianola. We'll talk about this one more. One time that you had to take 2 level B roads to get to it. Once you got to the property, it was amazing. But getting there was a little off road. And then the income approach, that's where we're going to use future rent minus expenses. And we're going to use a net operating income as a way to establish a value. So we're using rent and the income from that rent, net income, to establish the value. It's used in combination with that capitalization rate, which we're going to talk more about during math. And then at the bottom of page 24, reconciliation. I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to bet an appraiser would describe this to you differently. Here's how I'm going to describe it based on how I feel like it could be presented to you. Reconciliation isn't just taking all the data, adding it up and dividing by 5 and getting an average. Or it's not the median or the mean, MEAN. That's not the mathematical formula. I'm going to describe this to you for the purpose of the exam, that it's the it's the appraiser's opportunity to determine and defend their report. Why using the sales comparison approach makes more sense than the other two. Why it's going to give the most accurate data. Of the 10 properties that they found to use as comparables, why 2 of them they feel would give more of an accurate analysis of what the property is worth. You got to justify. It's like their summary report. Why does that matter? Well, you got to keep in mind these appraisals stick around a long time. They stick around the entire life of the loan. And I've got a friend of mine whose dad was an appraiser, I think in Wisconsin. And he became an auditor for the state. And he sometimes would audit appraisals that were 10 plus years old to make sure that there was no fraud or collusion with a lender. So there's other reasons, but those are a couple that come to mind. Okay, real estate financing, page 26. You got 8 test questions here. We know a mortgage is made up of that PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Now, we talked about qualifying for a mortgage, and we've got a lot of math calculations that I want to revisit at the end of the week or next week. So let's actually go ahead and jump ahead to page 29. And we've got some mortgage terminology. The acceleration clause states in a mortgage that if you default or start to miss payments, the bank reserves the right to move up the due date. You can't just say, oh, I got 30 years to figure this out. No. The moment you start missing payments, they reserve the right to move the due date up. Alienation clause, we've already talked about this one this morning, states that if for any reason you transfer the title from your name to another name, you got to pay off the mortgage balance. Now, how would you be transferring it to another name? You would sell it, you would will it, or you would gift it to another person. Assumption of mortgage. Again, some mortgages you can assume from the seller as long as you qualify. I'm going to pop around here a little bit. I think discount point on page 30, 100%. On the exam, you'll have math on it. Know that it is 1% of the amount borrowed, and it's a way to buy down the rate. Prepaid interest, temporary or permanently. So right now, if you don't like the rate, maybe there's a seller that's willing to contribute some money to your buyer to buy the rate down to a rate they do like. Maybe. But it's 1% of the amount borrowed. I would know foreclosure. 2 terms I had you write down to look for. REO, real estate owned. And I've seen it both ways where it's an acronym and it's spelled out. The second term I want you to put down there is redemption clause. This is a clause in the mortgage that says if they can get all of their back payments and penalties caught up, they can get back on track and avoid foreclosure. They can redeem themselves. Then loan origination fee. This is a fee for just creating a brand new mortgage. Fee to create a brand new mortgage. Short sale, again, top of page 31. This is where we sell it short of what we owe to the bank. It's not short on time, it's short on money. I would know the definition. I would also know the question, does that person, the amount forgiven that they owe to the bank, are they 1099? Do they have to pay taxes on that amount forgiven? And the answer is no. It was a part of some sort of mortgage relief act. They're not 1099 on it. For a conventional loan, I would know PMI, who pays it and who benefits from it. The buyer or the borrower pays for it. That's the same person, the buyer that's borrowing money. They pay for it, but it benefits the bank. And anytime you put less than 20% down, you got to get PMI. I would know FHA insured loans is a low down payment loan for low to moderate income borrowers or buyers. Again, the insurance comes from the government, not a private mortgage company. Top of page 32 is a VA loan. This is for veterans. And again, I would know that term CRV, Certificate of Reasonable Value. That's specific terminology with a VA loan. An adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM loan, again, I would know that rate adjusts. It's not fully amortized. It's only partially amortized. Another example of a partially amortized loan that could pop up, literally pop up, is a balloon loan. See what I did there? Wait, Chaz is the only one that likes it. I'll take it. 1 out of 18 isn't bad. And then the other one that really stands out to me here is going to be owner financing on page 33. This is where the owner basically serves as the bank. It's used in combination with a land contract or a purchase agreement. The verbiage I had you add there was a purchase money agreement or a purchase money mortgage. And then a reverse mortgage Just as a reminder, this is for someone 62 years of age or older. That's the key element. But it is a reverse mortgage in the sense, instead of them making a mortgage payment every month, they're receiving money every month, which means the mortgage balance is going to go up instead of down. And then again, the financing system, I would know the primary is the one that originates and charges the loan origination fee. Secondary mortgage market, I would know that the major player is Fannie Mae. And you will hear lenders use the term Fannie Mae. Lorena, you could probably count, if you had a dime for every time you said Fannie Mae, you probably wouldn't even be in this class. You'd be in the Bahamas. Now, why did Lorena, as a loan originator, care about Fannie Mae? She didn't work for Fannie Mae. The reason she cared is because she knew that she needed to build a loan that Fannie Mae would want to buy. That would meet their standards because, again, they're the major player. And she wanted to build a loan and originate it because she knew there was a 95% chance her bank was going to sell it on the secondary. And she wanted to build it in a way that would be sellable on the secondary. And considering Fannie Mae is the major player, they're the ones that we want to appease. That's the theory. I would know in the middle of page 35, triggering terms. This means we've got to disclose the terms to qualify for a loan. We can't just say buy this house for $500 a month. We can only do that if we also disclose the price, the down payment, the length of the loan, the interest rate. What do we got to do to qualify for it? And then I would also know on page 36, TRID. This says we've got to have 3 days with the loan disclosure, 3 days with, loan estimate, 3 days with loan estimate, 3 days with closing disclosure. And any of the fees related to getting a mortgage have to match front to end. Can you imagine if you were required to disclose all of this when you bought a car or when you got insurance? I've got to disclose my fees. Do you know how much your insurance agent's making off of your policies? You're required to disclose that. But in real estate, we are always working to transparency. And I've never had that be a bad thing.